we used real worms at times, and I had a real worm up my nose and bathed with worms. And
thank you very much, Adrien, for being with us today and chat a bit about Chapelwaite and your relationship with Stephen King's work, and maybe a few other questions about what it is to shoot a horror story or an historical horror story. Let's start with the obvious. I'm sure some of the viewers are not familiar with Chapelwaite, with Jerusalem's Lot, the short story that it's based on. So if you could summarize or pitch the show for them, please.
It's a period Gothic horror format, which is something I love. I think the stakes are very high when your characters are stripped of all the things we have at our disposal in our modern world.
Dear Cousin Charles, by the time you receive this letter, I shall be in my final resting place. I bequeath you a magnificent ancestral home we call Chapelwaite.
What do you think?
It's changed slightly from the original story, but it follows Charles Boone, who is a sea captain who inherits an ancestral home in Maine. After his wife's passing, he and his children move there and relocate to this town called Preacher's Corners, which is proves to be very inhospitable. And they find themselves in a house that is also a very ominous place, but there appears to be things lurking within the house and within the walls, and it's quite a scary journey.
So what about Charles Boone? What's your take on this guy? It's not spoiling to say that he lost his wife and he's raising his daughters. This is added in the story of the TV series. So how do you feel? What kind of man is he to you?
Well, I think all of that is, I mean, I like the addition of that. I think the children and the family element of Chapelwaite is really lovely and essential to the man that Charles is and who he becomes in this journey, because the most relatable thing I find is that it's a man who wants to love and protect his children, and now that he's alone as a single parent and fighting against all of these obstacles, I think that is something that's very relatable. I think, you know, many people are faced with lots of challenges, and but I think Charles had suffered quite a lot of trauma in his life, and I think that's also shaped who he is. And he was a sea captain, and I think he's had to be very pragmatic. He has to be a leader, and he proves to be one.
He's going to have his mind somehow questioned, or his sanity, or I mean, from what I've seen, it seems that it's part of the reflection of the show, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's revealing too much, but Charles is reeling from what he feels is a bit of a madness. He's having visions, and there are very real things to be afraid of within the story. But then when your own mind is altering its space and you have a difficult time differentiating what is reality and what is a fantasy within your own mind, and what the significance is of a reoccurring theme of very dark thoughts, I think that is maddening and adds a tremendous burden to the character.
Well, that's what Stephen King does, right?
Yes.
It's of course it's often horror, and there are external elements, but it's a lot of inside horror, isn't it?
I assume writing and conjuring up tales like this is a maddening process, a very isolated process creatively. You know, if you imagine what it would take to create these worlds and live with these worlds in your head, it comes from some place of truth. It comes from something, and you know, I relate to that. I think that that's it's a wonderful thing to be able to go there and fearlessly create that. And there's a sacrifice that comes with that, I think, that most people probably wouldn't understand, I guess. But as an actor, part of that process is to also go there and to let a degree of that envelop me in the process of inhabiting a man, stepping into his shoes.
Let's talk about the set. How was it? I mean, we see the result of it, but how real was it? Or was it just like inside like a warehouse somewhere and it's all green screen? Or did you guys find the spot looking like this?
Those were sets that were built, but we were essentially on location. You know, it was built on the ridge on the side of a mountain. It was a very windy location. It had a lot of motion. And then Chapelwaite itself, the home that my character inherits, was a period home that we took over for the duration of our project. And you know, when you have that, it's a luxury. I mean, you know, and we recreated some inside a studio. We had studio work as well, and then certain rooms were rebuilt to accommodate shooting and having dollies and crane moves, etc. But that too felt very real once you were inside of the space.
I was about to ask, of course, it's the magic of acting, and that's your job, so you know how to pretend. But especially in a very atmospheric work like this story, how important is your relationship with the setting around you and how you feel it? I mean, because it's literally palpable. It's literally this house is alive some way. So how do you work on that personally to feel this?
And you use the word pretend. It's very difficult to look at it in those terms for me, because if I feel like I'm pretending something, I feel like I'm cheating. I feel like I'm not being sincere, and I do whatever I can to connect. That would mean being very familiar with my desk, my character's desk, for instance. I know where my notepads are. I know where my pistol is hidden. I know where a flashlight may be. I have to own that. And so the more you have at your disposal, as opposed to being in a green room, imagining that this is there and you're sitting on an apple box and looking at something that isn't there or someone, you know, those are challenges. But then you have the responsibility of digging in and finding who that is and the connection, or what those characteristics of the person that you would be talking to are, so that you are relating to that, or else it's nonsense.
How do you like historical dramas? We've seen you in Peaky Blinders and earlier in Houdini. Earlier in this discussion, you said you liked it because the characters are stripped of all the things modern. Does it help the acting to find a way to disconnect? Or is it tricky because you have to connect, as you said, you have to find a connection between you and the character. So if he's from several centuries ago, it changes your relationship, right?
You know, the horrors of our past, and when here we sit in the future to look back at the mistakes and to see similarities that exist in today's world, there is hopefully some education within that, some reminder of what has not changed and what must change within us. And, you know, it references a lot of things. But back to the point, which I think is really interesting, of the question you made, of it's more about what is dissimilar from my life personally that allows a greater immersion for me in a character. I think that is the advantage for me portraying a man from another time. I so clearly see the distinction and where I go away. There's an ability to step out of yourself in a greater detail that is something that I think helps.
How do you play fear?
Look around. Just look around. There's lots to be afraid of in this world. There's lots, unfortunately, to be afraid of. I mean, it's about what you do with that and what your character does with that, whether you've experienced the need to run or fight in your own life. If you open your eyes, you see that there's a lot to, I guess, meditate on about what is so frightening out there, that are real things to be afraid of. And then if you can connect to that, whether you're running from something in your mind or a giant gorilla, you have something that you know is there's plenty to run from at certain points.
There are earthworms in this story. We knew about spiders and snakes as scary animals. What about that? What about earthworms, if you think about it?
If you were to have reoccurring visions of anything, it would be pretty frightening, let alone a worm. But yes, I think it is very scary, and the use of worms, and we used real worms at times, and I had a real worm up my nose and bathed with worms, and it is frightening, and I do take pleasure in going there to add an element of excitement for the audience. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Adrien, for your time.
My pleasure.